On this episode, Chris Woods is my guest. Chris is the founder of LifePoint Financial Group. He shares with us his insights on faith, entrepreneurship, and his run in with Shaq. Listeners, thank you for spending time with us. So please, lend us your ear. Hello, Chris. I appreciate you spending time with us today. I met you through Daredream and Alicia Vaz. As I stated last week, I was searching for a community of faith based entrepreneurs and came upon Daredream. Please share how you got involved with Daredream and a little about yourself.
Sure. So I originally started a small group for entrepreneurs at National Community Church several years ago. And we were meeting, periodically a few times a month. And then it was one of the people in our group who had said, Chris, you should meet Alicia. She's also starting and running a similar group for faith driven entrepreneurs as well, and you two should connect. And so we both had these separate groups happening essentially at the same time. And, eventually I talked to Alicia and said, hey, I think it'd be great if we were able to just combine our groups. That way we could combine resources and we could have just a larger group with more resources, more talents and treasures to share. And so she and I eventually came together and decided we would just, instead of having two separate entrepreneurial groups, we'd have just one. And so that's how we came together under the Dare Dream umbrella. And it's been a great partnership ever since. So she and I have been working together with this group. I think the combined group has been in existence for about a year or so now. And then separately, I had a group prior to that going on for about a year and a half prior to Alicia and I teaming up. So, but it's been great to combine. She's does such a great job with the group, and I'm just happy to be able to be involved and help out and share whenever I can as well. So, and then about myself. So, a few things. So, I was originally born in St. Louis, Missouri. So, I'm a big St. Louis sports fan, particularly the St. Louis Cardinals. But born in St. Louis, grew up there. In fact, my parents still live in St. Louis. I had a chance and the privilege of attending Vanderbilt University for college in Nashville, Tennessee. I was really blessed to have a full ride to play basketball at Vanderbilt, and such a great experience playing college basketball. We were able to go to the Sweet 16 when we were there. We won an SEC title when I was there as well. One quick highlight I'll share from that experience was my freshman year. I had the fortune, maybe misfortune even, of playing against Shaquille O'Neal, and I had to guard Shaq for an entire game. And the Cliff Notes version of that is, we first of all, we did win the game. So it was I think at the time Shaq played college basketball for LSU, and at the time they were ranked 20th in the country when we played them. So they were a good team, and we played them in our gym, and so we won by, I want to say, at least 10 points or so. And I was guarding Shaq the entire game. And two highlights from that game for me was, for one, that was Shaq's lowest scoring game his last year of college, was against Vanderbilt. So we held him to 10 points, which again, I need to emphasize the we. Yes, I was guarding him, but it was definitively a team effort to guard Shaq. Um, what also stand out from that game, though, is that I took an elbow from Shaq in the mouth that it kind of shattered one of my teeth, and the other one it killed the nerves in one of my other teeth, and I ended up having to get an implant years later from that elbow from Shaq. But anyway, even though had that misfortune from the elbow that led to some dental bills. Still a good experience, a good memory. Had a lot of fun playing not only against him but also just playing college basketball in general. I played a little bit professionally after my time in college, and now I live just outside Washington, D.C., in Alexandria, Virginia, with my beautiful wife. I have two incredible kids who I just love and adore. And then, of course, now I'm also a financial advisor, and I started my own practice here called LifePoint Financial Group a few years back, and really enjoying the ability to give back um, through the work I'm doing in that practice.
Chris, that is a gem of a story. Kudos to you. Yes. Yes. And where's Shaq to pay those dental bills of yours? Hello, Shaq. Come on now.
Right? I, I should be hitting him up for that. That implant process is not cheap, and that took a while. I remember sitting in the dentist chair and looking at X-rays, and my dentist, I remember vividly, she asked me, she said, "Chris, I'm looking at this top incisor of yours, and have you had any trauma on this tooth in the last, 10 years or so?" And I'm like, "Well, actually, I have had some serious trauma that hit the tooth, and it was Shaq's elbow. And so Shaq's elbow killed the nerves in that tooth, and that's what led to the implant. So yeah, so it is pretty crazy, and I really should send him the bill, but yeah, at least I have a story to tell. So.
Does Shaq know this? Does he know this story?
I don't know if he does or not, but you're right. I should let him know,
That's
and I
right.
should get a check in the process as well from one of his Papa John's royalty checks. Maybe he can go ahead and send my way.
Okay. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, let's dive in. What led you to entrepreneurship?
That's entrepreneurship is something I've been thinking about even when I was a child. I used to in junior high and even high school used to think about it. It always intrigued me, And then as I was in college, I'd see some friends of mine who were talking about businesses. Even in my young 20s, is something that I used to buy Inc. magazine, Entrepreneur magazine, and I just kind of used to obsess over that, but I never knew what kind of business I wanted to start. Um, but I think what led me to it was just a desire to set my own schedule and the ability to have essentially unlimited earnings, but to really be able to earn what I felt like I was worth, essentially. Um, and something else for me that was important, in terms of entrepreneurship was um, I had to have a release from the feeling of maybe I wasn't doing enough when I was in salaried positions, right? I was always somebody who I wanted to overachieve. I didn't want to just do the work that was given, I wanted to do more. And even though as a salaried employee, I wasn't being awarded financially for doing more, I just wanted to be that person doing more. And so what would happen was anytime I would have a weekend where I didn't do any work, which is perfectly normal. It's what you should take your weekends off when you're a salaried employee, or even if there's a day where I wanted to take an extra half hour or something at lunch, I just had this feeling of guilt that I couldn't shake. And as an entrepreneur, that I was able to release that feeling of guilt I would sometimes have when working for someone else, the fact that I wasn't doing enough. So that was important for me to be able to do that. But also, just everything that comes along with being an entrepreneur, setting my own schedule, um, starting to work towards the vision that I wanted to have, that also matched up with the life that I wanted to live. And those two things were important to me, is being able to really think through and just pray about the vision that God was putting in my life and be able to walk that out on the timeline that was appropriate for me. And even as an employee, I also prayed about the vision God had for my life in that company I was working with. But now I feel like I have the ability to really harness um, everything that God is tasking me to do. Because as an employee somewhere, of course, you're limited maybe in terms of the roles that you have and the things you're being asked to do. And I felt like there's parts of my brain that were just starting to atrophy that I just didn't use, especially on the creative side when you're an employee. But as an entrepreneur, being able to tap that creative side that God has blessed us with and having the ability to really take a look at all the things he's calling me to do, and again walk those out on my timeline, my time frame, being able to take the time I want with my family in the process, and was so important to me. So those were just a few things that to me I just love. I think entrepreneurship is truly a faith walk, and just the ability to be able to walk through that is what led me to it and what's keeping me there as well.
How does entrepreneurship and your faith intersect?
Yeah, so to me, entrepreneurship, it truly is a faith walk. When you don't have a consistent paycheck coming in each week, and you don't know how much money you're going to earn next month, next year, that become that to me, that reliance on my faith, on the Lord for his provision, was so critical. It really is critical to entrepreneurship. I think that if I weren't a person of faith, entrepreneurship would be very stressful for me. But I have peace that the Lord's placed me in this position as an entrepreneur to walk out the gifts he's blessed me with and to bless others. So I don't carry the anxiety that I had before, even before as an entrepreneur. And I think the same anxiety that other entrepreneurs will have, because I have peace that God will provide. And I continue to look to Him for the path He wants to take me down. And I do my best to follow that. That's not to say, of course, we're human too, and I'm human as well. I have my own anxieties about, you know, where business is going to come from and things like that. Of course, I think this is, again, we are human. However, I start thinking about the path that I'm on and the place where he's taking me. I have some peace about that. And so, the fact that we don't know, we don't have the consistency of the paycheck, to me makes faith such a critical part of entrepreneurship, and just understanding that, and there's so many biblical lessons in that, in terms of, kind of thinking about the path of an entrepreneur and just trying to understand, trying to grow a business and the trials and tribulations that come with that, how the enemy is going to try to pull you away from that at every turn, it seems sometimes, but continuing to stay faithful, continuing to remember the promises of God in this process is a critical part to me of helping pull me through it as well. So I do think that, yes, as an entrepreneur, I think faith for me is at the center. And it's what gives me not only the peace to move forward, but also the confidence as well to know that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. But I also now more and more appreciate looking to Him to order my steps, provide the vision of where he's trying to take me. And I've certainly seen in my few years of owning my own business, um, that playing out, just being able to feel confident in the things that he's showing me, and the things that I'm walking out as well, and how he's blessed the business during that time frame as well.
How do you apply your faith on a daily basis to your business regarding clients, regarding your approach?
Some of that, it starts with prayer. Just always praying for direction, praying for wisdom, praying for discernment. And when you work in the world of finance like I do, there is no way to know where the stock market will be, you know, an hour from now, much less next week, next month, next year, in 10 years. And so when you're planning for people, that stock market is such an unknown. Yet people, when you're trying to do planning for people, that you need to incorporate some projections for that as well. And so much of planning for me, again, kind of is a faith walk. To me it's prayer. I mean, I there's also certainly to me some time tested principles that I employ. And I feel like if we know historically how certain financial markets have done, and you can use some of that historical data to help inform projections you're making people for people in the future. But at the end of the day, there's no guarantees in anything that we're talking about in the financial planning world. And that's where I think prayer is so important, and just faith is so important as well, at least for me as a financial advisor. Just continuing for me to pray for wisdom, that some of the decisions that we're making are the right decisions, and knowing that it may not end up the way that we thought it would, but at least we have the best information and we're thinking through all the possibilities while we make those decisions. And um, so just prayer for that wisdom, prayer for that discernment, because the future certainly is unknown, only in God's hands, and we just pray for them that we can make the best decisions in the present. And I think that for me, I one of the reasons I wanted to start my own business was so that I could bring my faith more into my business. As as many people would know too, in most large companies, prayer is not an open topic of discussion for different reasons. Um, but I wanted it to be. I wanted to have that ability to talk about my faith, to pray with clients, what have you. And so starting my own business allowed me the ability to do that. So because I get to make those decisions. And so if I want to pray with clients before and after meetings, I do. Of course, I always pray for them in general, when I'm not meeting with them. But whenever am meeting with Christian clients, I always encourage and like to pray with them over their finances too. So that's important to be able to do that. One of the designations that I have, it's a called a Certified Kingdom Advisor designation, or CKA for short. And that's a designation where I've gone through some biblical principles and teaching about finance, and being able to talk to other clients about that is important. And to me, what I think is what I found in going through them, a lot of biblical principles, again, are just time tested financial principles that it's just sound doctrine to me, in terms of finance. But being able to work with others in walking those out is also important.
How does your faith and entrepreneurship help define you, or does it?
Mm. That's a good question. And I think that it's important. I think it's an entrepreneur, because I feel like there's so many different angles I can tackle this question from, but I'm going to start with this one. This is a job that can and does consume you, because you do become what you are trying to do as an entrepreneur, because it's something that you don't just leave. You don't clock in and out of this occupation. When you're an entrepreneur, again, you're an entrepreneur, right? And you're oftentimes thinking about marketing. You're thinking, I mean, all these things kind of stay in your head, and it's easy, I believe, to let that what you do define you. So it's easy to let that happen if you let it. Um, but I also think for me, it's important that I am defining the business rather than the business defining me, right? I am actually setting the terms of what I want that business to look like. And so, therefore, for me, I don't feel like I'm allowing that business to define me. However, I do want my faith to define me. I do want people who I work with, who I interact with, to see me as salt and light. So I do hope that my faith does begin to define me. I can live out more of that Romans 12 doctrine in not only my interactions with clients and also others in the world, that I can continue to do that. So I guess I don't see, I try not to, I do want my faith to define me, but I try not to allow entrepreneurship to define me. I want to be the one setting the terms and being able to express myself and my gifts through the entrepreneurship and be the one defining what that looks like, especially in the world of finance, where this has been a business where it's things have been done the same way for a long time. And so I think it's important for me that I can look at this and do this in a maybe in a different way. I could perhaps cater to a different audience that's traditionally been served. Maybe I can even begin to work in unique ways with clients that haven't how they haven't been worked with before. And so I think there's a lot of things I can do to bring my own thoughts to it and better define the work that I'm doing myself than allowing the work to define me. But again, I do want my faith to define and be the central part of whatever I'm doing.
When did you hear the call of God on your life?
So the call of God, let me just frame this up real quick too, that I wasn't saved until I was 25. And I grew up as we grew up in our home, mostly as holiday Christians, I would say, Christmas and Easter people. Um, but I did not have a relationship with Jesus. It wasn't until I was saved at 25 that I understood what having a relationship with him really means. And then, having that relationship and looking to him for the future and how he wanted to guide me. And then I slowly started to see, as my faith was growing, how different events that were occurring in my life, like that, the time for me between about 25 and 32 were 7 significant years in my life where a lot of things were going on, good and bad. And I felt like God was shaping me through all of it. And so that ability to listen to him and understand where he is trying to take me was important. And so I can see, look, especially now with the benefit of hindsight, you can see God's fingerprints all over your entire journey. And that same thing was true for me. So I could see his fingerprints on my journey throughout. But I do want to make mention of one thing. When I kind of knew I was a financial advisor for the first time back in the late 90s. This is I kind of started that like right before I was saved at that point. And but then I left it. I just at the time, for a number of different reasons, I left it. But I still felt a pull. I wanted to get back to it. I took on some other roles for a while. And one thing that I'll share that was clear, that I knew I wanted to go back to being a financial advisor. And one quick story I'll share that was the definitive evidence was, I was studying for my certified financial planner designation while I was working at another job. I'd already kind of made the decision I wanted to go back to being a financial advisor. So while I was at a previous job, I was studying for this designation. And then my plan was going to be, this is in about May of 2016 now. My plan was going to be to leave that company around November or so, and begin my financial planning career, Act Two, in January of 2017 was kind of the plan there. But of course, God loves to interrupt our own plans with His. And so I remember the day I was taking no, Yeah, the day before the CFP, which by the way it's a big exam. It took a year of classes and coursework and study. And so the day before the exam, I got a call from my boss telling me I was getting laid off. And so it's traumatic in the moment, that wow, I'm just getting laid off from my company. um but at the same time I felt some peace in it, that I had to kind of get over it quickly because I'm taking this exam the next day. So I kind of told my wife about it. We shared a couple of tears, like, you know what, I gotta get moving, I gotta go. And so I did. I went, took the exam the next day. um I passed it. I remember coming home with my passing certificate in one hand, and on my front doorstep, there was the separation paperwork from my company as well. And that was a very clear indicator it's time for one chapter to close, another one to open. The layoff also provided me with a severance package that I would not have had I left my company on my own. So again, just God's provision, the signs, the awe and the wonder for me came together very clearly in that moment, in that 24-hour span, from layoff to passing of that designation to the severance package. Just all of it was right there for me to see, and that was awesome.
What is the hardest part of knowing yourself as you walk with Christ?
Mm. You know, um, I can be my own worst critic, and oftentimes be really hard on myself. And I find I have to keep God's promises top of mind when I'm running a business, or else entrepreneurship can continue to create the stress and anxiety that I mentioned before. And, I think in our world we live in now, we see all the stats on anxiety, and I think that whenever you're running a business, there's so much that goes into that. And for me, I want to be I want to do right by my clients. I want to show excellence in whatever it is that I'm doing. I feel like just as a Christian, I want to be a great example. I want to be excellent, in the work that I'm doing. But I also know that I'm human. I'm subject to some of these human emotions. For example, just the art of comparison. I think in our financial business, we are oftentimes compared with other businesses. There's people are always asking about different questions, trying to compare you to, hey, how many assets do you manage versus this person over here, things like that. And I had to get myself away from that, and I had to just understand that the way I want to run this is different. Um, and so for me, just being able to let his promises wash over me brand new every day, and being able to remove the idea of trying to compare myself with anyone else. I just wanted to be my own self, be my own person, do the work that God's called me to do, my unique fingerprints, my unique gifting on what it is that He's called me to do. And so that's what I continue to walk out and continue to keep that at the core and at the focus. And that way, the more human emotions which still do pop up, I can minimize them with prayer and just keeping his promises top of mind.
Do you ever think about your identity and how your faith has shaped it?
I do often at that, mostly because in thinking about the difference of who I am today versus who I was 20 years ago. And, of course, as you get older, things like family shapes your life. Being married, having children has changed who I am. But I think about I am a very different person now. In fact, as I go back to college reunions in particular, these are people who saw me for 4 years between age 18 and 22, and they still probably carry some of those same feelings about this guy who they saw at that point. and I couldn't be a more different person now than what I was then. Maybe some similarities, of course, but very different in how I look at life and how I see myself, and probably how, the people in my life today would look at me and have, they describe me one way. My friends in college would describe me very differently, right? Um, so no, I would say that my faith, being saved, at 25, like I was, and you kind of have that look at your life before and after, and you see the differences in your life, all for the better. For me, it was important. So I think that, yeah, my faith has definitively shaped it. And I do think about that because I just think about the different person that I am. And like I said, I was supposed to have a college reunion this year that was postponed actually for the second year in a row now with the pandemic. But whenever I go back, I have those feelings in my mind that, oh, these are people who knew me then, right? And they don't really know me now. But sometimes when we talk, they sometimes are thinking about that, hey, this is the guy. Hey, so I oftentimes wonder about that, about when you go back to things like that, high school or college reunion, those people knew you at that point in life, or those few years in life. And they may not know your life now in some cases. And so, but yes, my faith has definitively shaped that. That's just a very clear example of some people who I haven't seen in all those years, who knew me then, who don't know me now. But yes, I can see for myself, the difference in how I live my life, and how I think about my life and think about others, and just what's important to me now versus what was important to me then is so dramatically different.
Do you ever wonder about other paths you may have taken and why Jesus Christ for you?
Sure. I'll come back to being saved and how that changed my life. Up until that point, I think that I was heading down a path, and I just towards money. I glorified money in my life at that point. I was looking for, whatever the path that was gonna. It was completely driven by money. That was that was the center of my world. That's how I looked at life. As I was just trying to figure out the things I can do to earn more money, and I did not really think too much about the impact, having an impact. I wasn't concerned about other people, really. I wasn't concerned about, having an impact on others as much as I was concerned about myself, and concerned about the things I needed to do to go out and hopefully earn more money, doing something great, be in a position of prominence where I used to care at that point, cared more about, about awards, what people thought about me, about prestige, right? All these things that I thought were important in my early 20s. Um, because I'd seen it maybe on TV. I'd seen it modeled in some places, maybe at companies I was at. I'd see these annual awards in annual conferences, and these awards that people were getting for their achievements. And I thought to myself, oh, I want to be that. I want to be that guy who's up on stage getting this award. And then, with some of those people, you may even find out later on, some of the people who are up on stage getting those awards were people who have left in their wake. You see divorced, you see children who don't talk to their parents much, or who had behavioral problems because the parents were never home, um, because they're out pursuing these careers for them. And I saw this happen with some of the people who received these awards, and the people who I thought I wanted to be. And that was some of that shift that was beginning to occur in me. But no doubt that, um, I would have definitively taken some different paths, had I not been saved, had I not looked at my life in a different way, and figuring out, how I can be more other centered, versus self centered, like I was before. So there's no doubt there's so many impacts on my own life and the lives of others by that decision, to follow Christ. So many different things I think about there. And I really don't know, who knows where I would be or what I'd be doing had I not made that decision. but certainly has completely and dramatically shifted, who I am and what I strive to be and the things that I want to do. And I just think about the fruits of the spirit now, that and just being able to exhibit those, and just living life with an eternal perspective rather than a temporal one now, which can really change your day-to-day decisions when you think about them in a different light like that.
Please share with us something joyful or three of your favorite things, places, or people.
So I will say that my family gives me more joy than anything. My wife and my kids, I think, are fantastic. I also kind of just love this idea. I love that kind of the mystery of marriage a little bit. I've always in my mind felt like marriage you know, is I'm meant to discover more about my wife, and I do. I feel like I'm always learning new things about her, often. And I love that process of feeling like there's so much more to uncover and unearth within my wife and who she is, and who God is calling her to be. And my kids too, just the lessons, the life lessons you can learn, and I had people tell me this prior to being a parent, but experiencing it, I see it so clearly, just all the life lessons, not only about parenthood, but also understanding how God the Father sees us, the forgiveness that he gives us, when we make mistakes. And I see that as a parent, so all these parallels between me being a father to my kids, and also God our Father, and just how we look at him, and also I think to myself how he views us. And so understanding that grace that I have for my kids, and I can now understand a little better the infinite grace that God has for us. So they've taught me so much about that relationship, but also just brings so much joy to my life watching them grow up. And boy, we've been blessed with such great kids too. So I can't say enough. So those are my favorite people, and I just love spending time. We love family vacations. This pandemic for us, even it's been a very challenging pandemic globally. I'll say as a family, we've emerged stronger. Just being able to spend more time together for us has been great. So I've appreciated that time we've been able to spend together. One of the things that we love to do as a family is we love the beach. And I mentioned that I grew up in Missouri, which is about as far from the beach as you can be, growing up in St. Louis. So I think I went to the beach my first time when I was a freshman in college and drove down to Florida with a buddy of mine. And we saw I think I saw the ocean for the first time when I was 19 years old, and I was just awestruck by the awesome power, of the ocean. And I find myself and our family going back to the beach every year, at least once, maybe a couple of times. It's what our kids look forward to the most every year is our beach vacations, because they love it and we love it. And in fact, I just want to share a quick beach story that was really touched me this year. Um, and we went to the beach earlier this year. We went to Hilton Head, South Carolina, and we were out there on our second day of being out there. We were out in the water. Actually, it was our first full day. We got there the night before. The night before we walked down to the beach, there were some people getting stung by jellyfish, right? The water is pretty warm. There's people getting stung by jellyfish. And I thought to myself, oh no, hopefully this won't be as bad when we come back out in the morning, because we're going to spend the whole day at the beach tomorrow. So we came out, and man, more jellyfish stings from people. Our kids got stung a couple of times, and I was getting a little concerned because our kids were getting fearful of being in the water. And I was like, oh man, we just got here. We got a week here. I hope that, we can enjoy our time. Our kids have been looking forward to this for so long. The next day, in fact, we spent the most of that second day at the pool, actually, but we came back for the third day. Within the first 30 minutes, our daughter and son were both stung by jellyfish. They wanted to just sit on the sand, not go back in. I brought everybody, we went back to our beach chairs, my wife and our two kids. We held hands, and I just said a prayer. And I just said a prayer. I said, Lord, I just pray for a spirit of encouragement and a spirit of fun, Lord. I just pray for a spirit of protection over our kids, and So we sat there, we prayed for a while, and I remember, that was on day 3. From that prayer through the rest of our vacation, no one in our family was stung by a jellyfish. Our kids had the confidence to go out in the water even farther, and it completely changed our vacation. So we kind of look at that vacation now as before and after the jellyfish prayer. But I thought that was such an incredible example of our Father. I was so thrilled that God gave us that experience, that our kids could almost see prayer happening in real time like that, and God's power, and just the spirit that it instilled in them, and the power of prayer. But for me as a parent, watching them out in the ocean for the final 5 days of our trip, the way that they were compared to our first day and a half was incredible. Just the difference was incredible. So that really, I think continue to jumpstart their prayer life. And so all the impacts are incredible and ongoing, but I think we'll always look back to that. But that's, you mentioned some of my favorite things. That remains the beach, and our time at the beach is just something that we will always do as a family, and certainly one of my favorite things to do as well. I will also just say a couple quick things here. My favorite things. I'm a big music fan. I love music. I love going to see live music. I love live theater. I love musicals. I love seeing live performances. I love seeing people being able to share those gifts with an audience like that. And I love being a part of the audience when that happens. Because I find that, especially with music, there's this unique connection to music in a way that other mediums just don't give us. The way that it stokes our recall to prior experiences we had as kids, when we can remember where we were when certain songs came out and what we were doing, and just the emotion that that brings us and how that can motivate us, how the things that music can do is just incredible. And I've always been fascinated by that, but that's something that I just love, going to see live music, love going to shows. When my wife and I have a date night, it's probably going to be going to see a show or going to a concert. We just love doing that as well. So those are just a few. I mean, there's so many things actually, but those are just a few of my favorite things, of being able to spend that time with family, but also friends as well, when we can just come together and just share, especially when you can really have those times where you can just sit down and share what's been going on, share how God's blessing you, and how we can be a benefit to others too.
Your logo for LifePoint Financial Group
Yes,
is is that a picture of like the beach?
that is a beach umbrella. Yes, that is a beach umbrella. Dead on. So, um, I will tell you, I'm about to undergo a rebrand sometime next year with a new name and maybe a new logo. And I had to think through. I might even use the same logo or use a logo that's similar. But because I do love having a beach theme somewhere in there, and because for me, not only is a place that brings us so much joy, but I think for a lot of people, when they think about the beach, they think about relaxation, to think about some tranquility, to think about just being able to, some stress and anxieties and worries go away when people are oftentimes on the beach or thinking about the beach. So I think for many, that's something I like, a spirit I like to convey in financial planning as well. But yes, you hit it on the head with my logo. That is a beach umbrella. Yeah,
Thank you for sharing your truth with us today, Chris. We appreciate you and all that you're doing in Christ and delivering this message.
no problem. Happy to be here. Happy to share. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come on and chat with you and share as well. So, no, I thank you as well for the opportunity.
Thank you. To connect with Chris, this mighty man of God and financial guru, go to www.lifepointfinancialgroup.com. Share your comments and opinions. Hey, do you think that Shaq should pay for his dental bills? We look forward to hearing from you.